Good morning and welcome to this week's Political Brew. I'm Don Kerrigan. One more time, filling in for Pat Callahan this week. Pat's final week at News Center, Maine, and we wish him well in his retirement. We're joined this week by Political Brew veterans, Democratic analyst Betsy Sweet, Republican analyst Phil Harriman. Thanks for being with us. What a surprise, a lot going on the national level. One crisis ended. Brittany Griner released by the Russians, home in the U.S. The United States traded a prisoner we had, a convicted terrorist arms dealer, back to Russia. Is this a good thing? Betsy, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, it's a travesty that she was ever there in the first place, and certainly that she hasn't been released. If that was LeBron James who had been taken, he would have been out on day 2. And so I think it does reflect a lot on the fact that she had to be there in the first place because of pay inequity so much between women and men in basketball, that she has to go overseas to be able to play, to make a living. So I think, it's good.
But this is the Russians doing and the Russians' fault.
No, absolutely. But she wouldn't be over there playing if she was treated equitably here. And so I think it's awesome. I'm so glad she's here. I've been hoping and praying for her and her family, and I hope that she gets the rest and the support she needs, and I hope it never happens again.
Phil.
Well, I'm delighted that an American citizen has gotten out of a Russian jail. We should all be grateful and appreciative for whatever the Biden administration did to make that happen. But it sure appears as though that was a very lopsided switch. We got an American citizen home, and we let a convicted weapons dealer, one of the most dangerous people on the planet, in my view, got sent home and free. There are still other Americans over in Russian jails, and we can't forget about them, and hopefully the Biden administration will make some progress.
Right, and there's been criticism of President Biden, of course, already for this, and saying that it's made America weaker. Do you think that has?
No, I don't think it has made us weaker, but I think it is also a signal that what's going on in Ukraine and the Russians and the Americans' involvement is all part of this multi-level chess game that's going on with people's lives.
Yeah.
Which always is going on, isn't it?
Right.
Congress this week passed the Respect for Marriage Act, a result really of the Supreme Court decision earlier this year about Roe versus Wade. And Betsy, I know this obviously has personal meaning to you.
It does, and I think it's awesome that they've done that. I think it's very good, important, and telling that it was such a strong bipartisan vote, and I hope that signals to the Supreme Court that it is time to actually do what the law says and to not undo years and years and years in this and Roe v. Wade of precedent. And so hopefully this will signal a message, because it was such a strong bipartisan support. And of course it's assurance for thousands, millions of people across this country and their families.
And did it go as far as it needed to?
I mean, no, because it's not in the Constitution. It's not. But I think it came close, and it certainly signals the intent, and that's very important.
Yeah. Phil?
I see it very differently, but I'm delighted with the end result. The Supreme Court ruled on Roe versus Wade based on the Constitution that said the Constitution of the federal government didn't empower 9 people to determine a woman's right to choose. Therefore, it went to the states to determine. And because Congress passed a bill on this issue, I think is great. It now makes it clear under federal law that this Marriage Act is across the country.
Yeah. And Senator Collins played a significant role
Yes.
in making this happen, perhaps one of the 2 people truly leading it and pulling the charge. Does this reflect well on her?
Oh, I think it does, absolutely. And Maine people have, on numerous occasions on state referendums and legislative items on these issues. Betsy and I worked on these when I was in the Senate. She's definitely representing her constituents.
Yeah, and of late she's gone back and forth a little bit. So I was glad to see her take some leadership on this.
Yeah. And speaking of the Senate, a couple other interesting things happening this week. The Georgia Senate race finally decided. My email inbox is relaxing a little bit after being clobbered unbelievably for one election over the last couple of weeks. $400 million they spent on this race. The outcome kind of predicted over the last couple of days. How much difference does the result of this election make, Phil?
Well, if it had remained 51-49, it would have been game over for the Republicans. Senator Schumer and the Democrats could basically run the table on almost anything they wanted. Now we have Kristen Sinema, who's unenrolled from the Democrat Party now.
Becoming an independent.
Right, and they're now going to have to make sure that they've counted all of the votes, every one of them, before the Democrats can move their agenda.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Betsy.
Well, I mean, thank God in Georgia, what happened in Georgia happened. And I think, we have to remember that vote happened in spite of some of the most severe voter restriction, voter suppression laws that had passed in the country. So it was pretty amazing. And I think that it did signal time that we could move forward. I think the Kristen Sinema thing is, she has been mostly with the Democrats, except on a few things. So I'm hoping she's going to stay there and enable the Democrats to move their agenda forward. However, I do think there's a problem of changing horses in the middle of the stream. Mm-hmm. She ran as a Democrat. If she wants to change the next time she runs and become an independent, awesome, go for it. But I don't think that it's right to do it in the middle. The voters have no way to weigh in at this point. So I think that is unfortunate. But I think that it's just going to mean that the Democrats are going to have to do what they've had to do anyway. And 51-49 is not a walk in the park, right. Regardless.
And you mentioned before we started recording that this also maybe makes Joe Manchin even more significant.
Well, I think that was the hope for me, anyway. I think for millions of Americans that he would lose his power as being the one person that could, decide Democratic agenda or not. I still think that he loses a lot of that power with Warnock winning that race, but I think it takes a little bit of it away.
Yeah.
So.
Phil?
I agree with Betsy. This puts Joe Manchin back on the sidelines unless he decides
Does it really?
Oh, I think so. Sure. Yeah. Unless he decides to unenroll, then we have a whole new conversation on political brew.
Right. And suddenly Angus King needs a bigger caucus room, right, if that happens. So, and this may be, for Senator Sinema, maybe aimed more at re-election in 2 years than what happens immediately.
Well, I think she's put herself in a position where she is, you got to go talk to her to find out where her votes are. Hopefully, from a political strategy point of view, she demonstrates to her constituents that she's a big influence in Washington and that they want to send her back.
Yeah, but Arizona has no track record of electing independents. So in terms of whether that helps her or hurts her in the race, we don't know. I mean, it could be following the national trend that many, many, many more people are getting out of both parties and registering as unenrolled independents. That may be a smart thing. It may be the silliest thing she's ever done or stupidest thing, and the Democrats run with somebody strong and she loses her seat. You never know.
Politics back in full view in the state of Maine this week. On the eve of the legislature being sworn in, Governor Mills unveils this proposal for a home heating assistance program for the state of Maine, $450 per person, most people, adults, and a total of $474 million to fund this program. First, let's talk about that first of all before we talk about the reaction to it from the legislature. Phil, does this seem like a good step, or does the amount of money, I mean a max of $900 per two-person household, show that there's limits to what the state can do?
Well, there are limits to what the state can do, but $450 million is a lot of money in anyone's checkbook. And I think the legislature that was asked on day one, before any committees had been organized, to pass such a massive spending bill was not the right thing to do. So they're going to have to back up, the governor's going to have to back up a few steps and go through the legislative process to get this passed.
Yeah, Betsy?
Well, I don't think it was ideal procedurally, but I think we got to look at the crisis that we have, right? If we back it up, the soonest anyone's going to get a check is the end of March or April. Cold heating season has passed. And the other thing that was in that bill that is the real crisis, I think, is all the rental assistance for people, thousands of people who are living in hotels right now who are going to be kicked out on December 31st with nowhere to go. Our shelters are full. So before we think about it in terms of political terms, was it a good move or a bad move, we are going to have thousands of Mainers, many of them right here in Portland, who are going to have nowhere to go and are going to be on the streets on December 31st. That is a crisis.
It essentially took a month after the election to come up with this plan. Should it have taken that long?
Well, I think because I think there was careful negotiations that were done. The governor pulled in both sides of the aisle. This proposal is a proposal that Republicans had put forward last session, and so it wasn't like it was completely out of the realm of anybody's thought. So I think that it was very important. It was negotiated. It was negotiated potentially in good faith, and the fact that you saw that the Republican caucus split showed that there was conversations going on, and a lot of people had agreed to it.
Right, and so the Republicans in the House, enough of them voted for it to easily give it the 2/3 majority it needed to pass in the House. Republicans in the Senate, as you indicated, Phil, not supporting it, although 5 of them had gone home before the vote, which is interesting. What do you make of that?
Well, as Betsy will concur, there is a lot of conversations that goes on between the House and the Senate leadership. It was probably predetermined that the House would pass it and the Senate would not give them the 2/3 vote, and that's the sort of the raw.
What's the reason? Is it political? Is it say, hey, we matter, you didn't come to us enough?
Well, I think it's bigger than that. I think that's a lot of money to spend. There's other things in the bill, as Betsy has alluded to. Let's make sure that we fully understand what we're voting on before we spend $450 million.
Well, I think the proof is going to be in the pudding, and whether people are willing to come back in early and say, okay, we're going to do this on day one, we're going to have a hearing on day one, and we're going to get this out so that it can actually keep people from having to go on the streets. If that's okay, if that works, then maybe that procedural thing works. But when we have a crisis, during the pandemic, we couldn't negotiate, we didn't have a lot of time to negotiate. This is just as much of a crisis. And so, especially the rental assistance for these folks that are going to be kicked out. So, I think we'll see. I don't think it's enough information to tell us what's going to happen going forward.
And of course, we have new leaders, Republican leaders in the Senate, new Republican leaders in the House, too. Is any of that a factor?
Oh, for sure, but that's why you have leadership for times just like this. And these legislative leaders and the governor should be sitting down and developing a strategy of how they're going to appoint people to committees, get the bill in front of them for a public hearing, and move this along the legislative process, just like all the other probably 2,000 bills that we're going to see.
The Republicans may need to do a little face saving in this. We don't know how it's interpreted by the public. But should they be able to get all of this done, have a hearing before they come back into session the 1st of January, then bang, get it voted on?
Absolutely.
Do you think they will?
I hope so.
We'll
Hope
see.
is not a
We'll
strategy.
see. Okay, so we are going to see whether it's politics or whether it's procedure and policy.
There you go. You mentioned committees. Legislative committees will be formed in the next couple of weeks. Is that all an inside baseball thing, or does it really matter to the public who's on these committees, Phil?
Oh, it's all inside baseball. I think, and I'm surprised that knowing that this bill of $450 million was coming, that they hadn't done some planning ahead of time and announced committee assignments early. But yeah, that's all inside baseball. Those are all between the Senate and House, and Democrats and Republicans. They decide who sits in those chairs in those committees.
To the second part of your question, does it matter to the public? Yes, it does. It makes a big difference who's chairing those committees, who's sitting on those committees, where they fall within their own parties, where they fall in terms of leadership, where they fall in terms of the governor, so it makes a big difference.
Geography as well.
Yeah, geography is huge.
And it also becomes the training ground for the future leaders of the 2 caucuses.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Speaking of leaders, a historic moment in the state of Maine on Wednesday when Rachel Talbot Ross was officially elected as Maine Speaker of the House, the first black person to be elected, and I think probably one of the few in the country. A huge moment for her personally, big moment for Maine, Betsy.
Oh, incredible moment for Maine. And I was there. It was stunningly beautiful to see the rich diversity of people that much more reflects who Maine is today. And then the incredible moment of her father, who was the first Black American to be elected to the Maine legislature 50 years ago, to be able to be there at 90 plus years old and watch his daughter. I mean, it was, it pulled on everyone's heartstrings, and it was beautiful. And it's critically important to diversify our leadership and to have us go in the direction of where Maine is now, not where we've been.
Yeah, and her uncle was in the legislature briefly.
And he was there too.
When I was a young reporter from Bangor, and he was a young legislator from Bangor, and so they were there too. Phil, quite a moment.
While I didn't vote for Barack Obama, I was proud of my country when he won the Iowa caucus. I'm proud of my fellow Mainers in Maine for electing her as the Speaker of the House.
She's got a big job now because she's represented Portland, and suddenly your perspective has to become a whole lot
Yeah.
bigger, doesn't it?
Her family's from Bangor.
Yeah.
She spent a lot of time during this campaign north of Augusta, so she's very well aware of what needs to happen. And many of the issues, housing, hunger, some of the things healthcare that we address, they're not Portland issues. Those are statewide issues, and she knows it.
Do you think having that she brings a broader perspective to those issues?
Oh, absolutely. I think she totally understands that and is committed to working on it.
I think there's another aspect to this as well, Don, and that is that when you're in leadership, there's a power struggle within the party, and it's going to be interesting to see how she navigates her relationship with Troy Jackson, President of the Senate, and Governor Mills.
She's a pretty powerful person.
Oh, she
is, and she pulls people together. She got elected. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, great. And final thought, we talked about power and we talked about Portland. You've got this squabble in Portland over the school committee and financial issues within the school system. And apparently the city word this week, the city offered some help and the head of the school committee said, no, we don't need you. This just seems crazy.
Well, it just seems like the business of governing and administering school finances has gotten into the political arena, which has meant problems. Because there was a ballot measure having to do with just this, they didn't want help at that time because they wanted to look like they were, I understand that, but people got to get paid.
Yeah, no question about it. And an independent auditor, not political, not geographically invested in Portland, pointed out these problems before they surface. And to me, it's just another reminder of a ballot question coming to us in the fall about whether we're going to let the government take over the power grid in Maine.
Yeah. And that brings us to winners and losers of the week. Phil, we'll let you have the first word on this.
Thank you, Don. The loser of the week is the last topic we had on the Portland School Department not paying their employees in a timely manner. That's not unacceptable. The winner of the week, in my view, was Christian Sinema, who left the Democrat caucus in Washington. That's going to make that conversation more balanced because of it.
All right, Betsy.
My loser of the week are the people who voted against this emergency measure that's going to leave people cold and potentially homeless, despite any procedural issues. So that's my loser of the week, and the people who are going to really lose are the people who will be on the streets. The winner of the week to me is Rachel Talbot Ross, and one of the most diverse legislatures we've ever had elected, and what that's going to mean for perspective, what that's going to mean for the richness of our policy and the thoroughness of our policy. So Maine's a real winner.
And like 3/4 of the leaders of the legislature are women.
Yes, and in the Democratic Party, only one man.
There you go. All right. Thank you both very much. Political Brew will be back next week. News Center Maine will be back in just a minute.